you talk about how important diversity inclusion is. How do you define diversity inclusion?
So that's another great question. Let me say what I don't think it is. I think we spend too much time when we talk about diversity on the differences aspect of diversity and counting diversity. Both those things are true. I think they are very important. But if an organization spends too much of its energy only on the differences as opposed to the strengths, and too much time on counting versus saying, what is this counting doing for us? I think if you don't do that second part, diversity programs or the diversity objectives that we have become necessary conditions, but not sufficient. And one of the things I learned about this diversity piece is, if you really want to know whether you have diversity as a leader or as an organization, there should be some discomfort in the organization. If you're counting a lot of women, a lot of people of color, minorities, and the whole program is locked in recruitment and appointments, and nothing really changes, everything feels the same, you actually don't have much diversity in the company. Versus a world where a leader has to think, I'm not sure how I should do this because I have very different people and I can't follow the one-way, rigid way, which large companies tend to have. And the analogy I often give is inviting somebody to your house for dinner and they are vegetarian. So you have to think a little bit. It's not a problem. It's not like an insurmountable issue. But if you have to put together a really cool meal and everybody else is non-vegetarian, you just have to think, what do I do for dinner so that it's cool? So I think as a leader or as an organization, if your talent pool is not making you think and swivel and shift a little bit, we still haven't got enough diversity. So that's a slightly long-winded answer, but I do believe there has to be a bit of discomfort as you manage diversity. Then you are on to the strengths, and then you're really working on inclusion.
I actually think that was crystal clear. What really came across to me is it's got to really make you think, so you leverage that diversity and richness of people around you and really stretch yourself as a leader. Now, you mentioned culture and engagement, and you've worked for companies which are very supportive in creating an energizing workplace. What are some of those things that the companies you've worked for have done to truly create that?
It's really interesting, and I've thought about that a lot. And the first thing that comes to mind is that a lot of that, both in Unilever and J&J, which are incredibly mission-driven companies, I think many of us inherited that. Like the company was like that before I came in, and I've left those two companies, and I think they will stay like this for a long time. Doesn't mean I was a passenger, but I think it's important to say that these things don't happen overnight. Values-led leadership for many, many years creates that mission-driven culture that people feel like belonging to. So that's my first piece, that it is values-led and it is leadership-driven over the years. I don't think there are programs that drive engagement and culture. That's what the difference I'm trying to make is around tenure, about leadership, etc. You talked about large companies and what can small companies, for example, learn from that. I actually think we are living in a world where it has to be the other way around now. Most of the cool innovations are coming from everything that's small. I think we now live in a world where big is less helpful. So while mission-driven, values-driven leadership is great, and I think everyone can learn from that, I think speed and how do you scale innovation is something that we could learn from, I wouldn't call it the startup world, but a world where I think innovation is really a contact sport.